Today we are here with Emily McCrary-Ruiz-Esparza. Hi Emily, thank you for being here with us and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Edge.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. What about you?
Good.
Nice. Let's start our chat with something you experienced and wrote about, artificial intelligence in hiring. You joined an interview with a bot, and apparently it could be our future. What do you think about this new practice, and how will company and candidates adapt to these hiring tools? And have you noticed any gaps?
Sure. So there are a few ways that companies are using chatbots and AI to screen job candidates, text, voice, and audio. And these are used at different points in the recruiting process. Primarily, you'll see it in very early stage screening calls or in later stages when companies are trying to evaluate very specific job related skills. As far as what I think of it, it's not something I would want to participate in. It feels impersonal to me, but I've been surprised by the number of job seekers who have really been okay with it that I've spoken to. This is going to vary by industry, company size, job type. So, for instance, those working in customer service type roles in really large companies who are more often accustomed to automation in their jobs, at their daily jobs, and accustomed to a certain amount of anonymity in their roles, unfortunately, they're going to be more likely, though not guaranteed, to be okay with some, hyper automation to the recruiting process. Whereas on the other hand, someone who's a really highly sought after engineer who works in startups, for instance, they won't tolerate this at all. Other industries where this won't work, I spoke with a woman who has worked in international affairs in NGOs in the EU and in the US, and she was recently subject to several AI-powered voice screenings, and it was not appreciated. So as far as how companies and candidates will adapt to this, I don't think these tools are going away, but will probably reach an equilibrium where it's commonplace and accepted in some industries, and in others it's just not. I think it will also change quite naturally based on the way the labor market ebbs and flows. So when employers have the upper hand, as they do now in many parts of the world, including the US, I think we'll just see more widespread use of this that makes the employer's job easier.
Well, yeah, I think it will go like this, yeah. And changing the topic a bit, the next question is about the PR world. For us, timing is everything. So how do you decide when a workplace tech story feels timely or relevant enough to cover?
So, like many journalists, I like to cover things as early in the life cycle of the story as possible. That's why actually most of my stories don't originate with PR pitches. I work with PRs a lot, but my stories don't often originate there. They originate from conversations I have with job seekers, with founders, maybe from complaints I read on LinkedIn. And I'll tell you why they don't typically originate there. I seldom receive a pitch from a PR that isn't trailing a story that's been widely covered or hasn't already been sent to a dozen journalists. And I think PRs, some of them are very aware of this, not all of them, that freelancers like myself have a higher hurdle to clear when it comes to placing stories. So as freelancers, ours have to be extra original and extra timely. And so by the time, a story's been covered 5 times over, one of my editors, even though I've got a good relationship with them, their staff writers already covered it. So I'll often get PRs emailing me right after I've published a story, and their pitch is often, hey, you just wrote about, for example, bots in hiring. My client also makes an AI interviewing bot. Would you like to write about them? No, I just wrote that story. So it often feels like it's trailing just behind what's super timely and relevant. But that's not to say I don't heavily rely on PRs in some cases. I still really do. It just has to be about speed.
Yeah, you may be rather searching the story by yourself than maybe catching them between all the things that are already talked on the internet.
Hmm hmm
Okay, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I get it. If a startup building HR or hiring tech wanted you to write about them, then what three things would you want to set up front, and what would you make you decline the story?
So, like I said, I don't think I have ever accepted a pitch to simply write about a company. I have written stories about specific companies. And for instance, right now I'm writing about a startup who hired a science fiction novelist to help with their AI narrative design. That's usually the kind of story I find myself because oftentimes a PR pitch about a specific company is often not an exclusive. And I don't write stories that amount to, hey, look at this company. A better way to get on my radar is often to offer a founder, if we're talking about startups, is to offer a founder as a source on something else I'm writing about. So for instance, and those can be found, I will sometimes post on LinkedIn about who I'm looking for and what I'm writing about. Sometimes I use quoted to QWOTED. I'm using those less and less only because I'm getting less quality over time and relying on my existing network of sources. However, offering a founder as a source on another story is how I got to this profile of the company that hired the sci-fi novelist. So that founder commented on some hiring practices for another story I did. And naturally in our conversation, we were talking about the makeup of his team and how they got this sci-fi novelist. So, but generally, I'll need to see the following. First is that the angle that you're pitching hasn't been written about at least exhaustively before. So I've gotten pitches about companies that look really interesting and might be doing something really novel, only to Google them and find out they've been covered in the last 5 months by 5 outlets, three of which I write for, which is great, but I can't do anything with that anymore. And then the second is that there has to be something really, truly different about the company or the product that they're offering. So unless the company is getting close to doing something totally wild, so for instance, bringing back an extinct species, which companies are doing right now, it's really difficult to find a truly rare startup, especially in HR tech, which I write about a lot. It's a really crowded industry, so I would encourage PRs to really press their clients about finding an angle about what makes them different. And it can't be, oh, we offer a better customer experience.
Sure.
That's really
Maybe
subjective.
special.
Yeah, it has to almost be something more concrete about what makes them different.
Yeah, yeah. And lastly, let me ask you about your own podcast named How to Be Anything, in which you tell stories of unusual jobs, and it's truly fascinating. What storytelling opportunities or insights do you get from audio that you don't get in your written work? And how has that changed your view of what work can be?
Yeah, thank you. I had a lot of fun making that show. It was a lot of work. So
I
those
get
were,
that.
yeah, those were stories and people that I could never seem to find a place for. I write for mostly business publications, and they're not typically interested in stories about sheepdog herders and death doulas. And I wanted to tell evergreen stories about that were meant to pique interest and compassion in people. I think I've long had a pretty broad view of what work can be. Some of that is because I'm a writer and a freelancer, and that lends itself to oftentimes a very unconventional career. I'm also a reader, and reading will teach you all kinds of things that you don't see in your everyday. I'm also naturally drawn to unusual people, and so unusual people often have unusual jobs. And so that was sort of those people naturally sort of were around me. What did change is really my oeuvre. So I had never written for audio before, and I quickly learned that it's nothing like writing for print. With audio, I had far less control over the presentation of the subject. In writing, you can paraphrase, you can truncate quotes in a way that you can't quite manipulate them in audio. And so for podcasting, you're depending much more on your source and how they describe themselves in their work. As a reporter, you have to elicit a very different interview and conversation from them and find ways to trust them in ways that I don't have to when I'm writing for print or just for the internet in general.
Kind of different. It's a bit more challenging, I can say, right?
It was for me, yes.
Yeah, I can get it, you know. Well, thanks a lot for this amazing chat, Emily. And once again, thanks for being part of Beyond the Edge. Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Emily. See you next time.